The Tale of Tam Lin. Near Selkirk, in the Scottish borders, the Laird of Carterhaugh once again cautioned his daughter Janet. The fields and hills of Carterhaugh were hers to explore, but she must never, ever, under any circumstances, go near the woods. He repeated the warning about the fierce faerie knights who guarded them, and reminded her of Tam Lin, the village boy who vanished there many years ago. Since his disappearance, no one had dared enter the forest. Janet, however, didn't believe in fairy tales, or in being told what to do. So in mid-October she ventured alone into Carterhaugh Woods. The forest was breathtakingly beautiful and strangely inviting. She wandered carefree among twisted trunks and moss-covered roots until she came upon an ancient well, around which bloomed a stunning blue rosebush, its blossoms entwined like a spell. Janet perched on the edge of the well and reached for one of the largest roses. As the stem snapped, a voice rang out abruptly. "The Fairy Queen won't like that." Janet looked up at the young man perched in the tree. "The Fairy Queen doesn't like stealing from her woods," he said. "These woods belong to my father," Janet replied. "And anyway, I don't believe in the Fairy Queen or in any fairy stories." The young man dropped swiftly from the tree and stood directly before her. "I am a fairy," he declared. Janet stared at him, then laughed. "A fairy?" "Yes," he said, "though I wasn't born one. I was out riding my pony and wandered too far from home. I reached the edge of the wood and she took me." A flicker of sadness crossed his face before he met Janet's gaze again, his voice firm. "You must leave these woods and never return." Janet paused, then asked softly, "Are you Tam Lin?" The young man looked startled. "Yes, but how could you know that?" Janet explained the tale she'd heard growing up, the story of the village boy taken by the fairies, and how fear gripped the town when his pony returned without him. Tam listened, his expression clouded with sorrow. "I cannot leave," he said quietly. "The Fairy Queen's magic is powerful. I am bound to these woods." Janet stepped closer. "Can I help free you?" Tam studied her for a moment, then nodded. "Perhaps." He leaned in and whispered a secret, a way to break the Queen's spell. Janet listened intently and promised she would help. Without another word, she slipped away from the clearing and hurried home. A few weeks later, it was Halloween, the night when the Fairy Queen and her army marched freely through the woods, unhindered by mortal bounds. Janet slipped away from the castle and returned to the forest, to the place near the ancient well where she had first found the blue rose. Hidden behind a twisted tree, she watched the procession of horses moving through the moonlit woods. So many riders, cloaked in shadow and enchantment, but at the very end, astride a white horse, she saw him, Tam Lin. Janet summoned every ounce of courage and leapt from her hiding place as Tam drew near. She seized the reins, pulling the horse aside, and helped Tam dismount. At that very moment, a gust of wind tore through the trees, swirling leaves and magic in its wake. In the eye of the storm sat the Fairy Queen, radiant and terrible, atop a magnificent white horse. Her eyes blazed with fury. "Let him go, child, he does not belong to you," she said. Janet wrapped her arms tightly around Tam and cried, "No, I will not." The Queen raised her staff and turned Tam into a huge snake. Janet seized the serpent and held tight, even as it hissed and bit at her. She didn't let go. The Fairy Queen lifted her staff and transformed Tam into a roaring lion. Janet clung to the beast, even as its claws tore at her skin and its roar shook the trees. She didn't let go. The Queen raised her staff, and Tam became a white stag with magnificent antlers. Janet wrapped her arms around its neck and held fast, even as the antlers pressed into her ribs until she thought they might crack. She didn't let go. Once more the Queen lifted her staff and turned Tam into a burning branch. Flames tore at Janet's hands. The heat scorched her face, but still, she didn't let go. Instead, she ran to the well and cast the blazing branch into the water. Tam Lin rose from the depths and climbed out the well. The Fairy Queen's spell was broken, and there was nothing she could do. She had been defeated. Tam and Janet wasted no time. They ran, fast and breathless, through the woods. By the time they reached the edge, morning had broken. Janet had battled the Fairy Queen all night, but now she walked beside Tam, free at last. "Do you believe in fairies now?" Tam asked. "Yes," Janet whispered. "Yes, I do."